When a thoroughbred racehorse suffers a severe skeletal failure, the standard veterinary protocol is just euthanasia.
Yeah, I mean, that is the factual medical baseline we really have to establish right away for you.
Right, because the biological structure of a horse literally requires constant weight bearing on all four limbs, to maintain gastrointestinal function.
Exactly, and to prevent secondary fatal complications in the extremities.
So, because of this physiological reality, catastrophic bone fractures on the track basically result in an immediate medical decision to end the animal's life.
The logistics of equine rehabilitation are just physically constrained by the sheer mass of the animal. I mean, we're talking about 1,000 pounds of weight that must remain elevated.
Which is, well, it makes recovery from severe leg fractures statistically improbable.
Highly improbable.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are examining the factual history and medical survival of the Japanese racehorse, Sakura Laurel.
Because the literal events of Sakura Laurel's life are remarkable purely on their own merits.
Right. So to understand the magnitude of his later achievements, we first have to look at the literal biological factors that delayed his early career.
Yeah, starting with his genetics.
Right. He was born in 1991, and he had a European pedigree. He was sired by Rainbow Quest out of a mare named Lola.
Which was highly unusual compared to the domestic or American bloodlines that were just, mathematically dominant in Japan at the time.
And as a direct result of those genetics, his debut was delayed until his 4-year-old season due to literal bone inflammation in his legs.
Yeah, he finished 9th in his debut at Nakayama.
Right. And his first win took 3 starts, and it occurred on a dirt surface, not turf.
We also see in his data that he earned a spot in the Japanese Derby by finishing 3rd in the Ioba show. But joint inflammation forced him to withdraw again.
And he completely missed the Kika show.
He did.
Because his bones literally could not withstand the force of galloping on firm turf.
Right, and that completely explains why his first victory required a dirt surface. The dirt provided a softer impact, which reduced the physical trauma to his underdeveloped bone structure.
Okay, so that structural delay set him back years, but by age 5, his skeletal system finally reached full maturity.
Yes, and the data reflects that immediately. He began winning in the open class ranks.
Right, he won the Nakayama Kinpai and placed 2nd in the Meguro Kinen.
He was finally preparing for his first Grade 1 race, the Tenno Show Spring.
But then, during training, he suffered an injury that is objectively fatal in most thoroughbred cases.
A catastrophic failure.
Yeah, he fractured both front cannon bones. The diagnosis was a complete loss of racing ability.
Which typically results in euthanasia.
Right, but his connections refused euthanasia and chose a full year of rehabilitation.
Which is a complete deviation from standard veterinary and financial practices.
So I really need you to explain this directly without any comparisons. What is the actual medical severity of fracturing both front cannon bones?
Anatomically, the 3rd metacarpal bone, the cannon bone, is the primary weight-bearing column in the lower forelimb.
Okay.
When a horse runs, the entire weight of the animal is transferred sequentially onto a single front leg during the stride.
So a massive amount of physical force.
Exactly. A catastrophic fracture means the bone actually snapped in 2.
Wow.
The bone tissue is completely severed. It cannot bear weight without displacing or piercing the surrounding tissue.
So fracturing both of them simultaneously means...
It means the horse has absolutely 0 structural support in the anterior half of its body.
Which makes standing impossible.
Correct. And, as we established, a horse must stand to survive.
Because of the gastrointestinal and respiratory systems.
Right. If a horse is lying down for extended periods, the sheer mass of its own body weight compresses its lungs, restricting oxygen intake.
Right.
And it compresses the gastrointestinal tract. Lying down leads to colic, a severe gastrointestinal blockage that is frequently fatal.
Wait, so normally if a horse breaks one leg, they shift their weight to the other 3, right?
Yes, but that constant, unnatural weight load on the uninjured legs causes laminitis, which is a physical separation of the hoof wall from the internal bone.
But with bilateral fractures, both front legs are broken.
Exactly. The horse physically cannot shift its weight.
So to keep him alive, the veterinary team had to provide external mechanical support. How do you physically suspend a 1,000-pound animal?
They place the horse in a custom veterinary sling. It's suspended from the ceiling and wraps around the horse's torso, physically lifting its body weight. This removes the mechanical downward load from the front limbs.
Allowing the severed bones time to physically fuse back together.
Yeah.
And he was just suspended there. For how long?
For months. It requires 24-hour veterinary monitoring.
I mean, the pain must be severe.
It is. which means they must administer aggressive pain management to prevent the horse from thrashing. If he panicked, the fractured bone fragments would instantly displace and sever blood vessels.
So if you are listening and calculating the costs, the financial expenditure for 1 year of continuous veterinary intervention and specialized equipment is staggering.
Especially considering the statistical probability of him ever returning to competitive racing was almost zero.
Right. The owners committed extensive capital purely to preserve the biological life of the animal. They relied on zero empirical data to suggest he would generate a financial return.
But the historical record shows that the bones did fuse.
He literally survived, and after a full year of physical rehabilitation, Sakura Laurel returned to the track at age 6.
With a new jockey, Norihiro Yokoyama.
Right, because Futoshi Kojima had retired. So he enters the Nakayama Kinnin as a long shot, and he unleashes a late run to defeat a Grade 1 winner, Genuine.
And then he entered the delayed Tenno Spring as the third favorite.
Yeah, and in the final stretch, he surged past the Triple Crown champion Narita Bryan and the reigning Horse of the Year Mayano Top Gun to win his first Grade 1.
Those race results are highly anomalous given his severe medical history. When Yokoyama replaced Kojima, Yokoyama introduced a completely different physical input system.
And looking at the race tactics, Yokoyama held Sakura Laurel back at the rear of the pack for most of the race. How does that tactical shift mechanically benefit his specific medical history?
Well, by minimizing early exertion, Yokoyama reduced the frequency of maximum impact strides. For a horse returning from severe skeletal trauma, reducing the duration of maximum physical force on the front legs until the final seconds minimizes the structural risk of the bones refracturing.
So he conserved the maximum force output of the musculoskeletal system for the final straight?
Exactly. Maximizing terminal velocity against competitors who had already depleted their energy reserves.
And that physical preservation clearly yielded measurable success. I mean, he established a consistent record of victory against the highest-rated horses in the country.
He formed the three great rivals era with Mayano Top Gun and Marvelous Sunday.
He defeated Mayano Top Gun in the all-comers. He finished third in the Tenno Autumn, which the records strictly attribute to writing errors and poor physical positioning.
Right.
And then he won the Arima Kinnin decisively against Marvelous Sunday, earning the 1996 Horse of the Year title.
He proved that rehabilitation was a full restoration of elite physical capacity.
But the veterinary reality returned in 1997. He was now being trained by his former jockey, Kojima.
Yes, and he defended his crown at the Tenno Spring, but finished second to Mayano Top Gun.
And the records show a critical medical detail here. He raced this event with a, quote, minor fracture.
Yes, he did.
So the imaging in 1997 showed the bone structure was physically capable of withstanding the force of a race.
Yes, the imaging confirmed structural stability. They utilized localized inflammation reduction and allowed him to run.
Following that second-place finish, his team targeted the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe in France, but during the prep race, his skeletal system failed again. He suffered another severe injury to his leg.
And local veterinarians in France suggested euthanasia, adhering to standard protocol.
But the team's rapid medical intervention saved his life a second time. He was stabilized, returned to Japan, and retired to stud,
where he produced several graded stakes winners.
But 0 Grade 1 champions. He retired from stud duty in 2012 and passed away peacefully in 2020 at the age of 28.
Outliving both of his great rivals, Mayano Top Gun and Marvelous Sunday.
And despite the intense physical trauma, his biological lifespan was extensive. Living to 28 is advanced for any thoroughbred.
Especially one that suffered 2 separate instances of severe skeletal failure. It indicates his post-racing environment successfully managed the early onset osteoarthritis that inevitably results from severe joint trauma.
To summarize the core facts of today's deep dive for you listening, Sakura Laurel's legacy is defined by an atypical genetic origin that delayed his physical maturation.
Yes.
It's defined by the literal biological survival of bilateral cannon bone fractures and an objective race record that culminated in a Horse of the Year title.
His career required strict medical intervention and a rejection of standard euthanasia protocol.
Exactly. If you are analyzing this data, understanding this level of success requires looking strictly at the raw facts. Greatness involved a literal calculation of financial and medical risk, months of suspension in a veterinary sling, and factual biological persistence.
The veterinary records and race results stand together as factual documentation of the outermost limits of equine physical recovery.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more.